Hello everybody, welcome back to another session of Tips from the Trenches. Recently I visited with a man who has aphasia, and after that visit I knew that I wanted to talk about aphasia in my next session of Tips from the Trenches. So what is aphasia? Aphasia is a language disorder that affects the ability to communicate. It affects language functions such as speaking, understanding what others are saying, and naming common objects. Now, most aphasia types are caused by strokes. However, a type of aphasia called primary progressive aphasia is a neurodegenerative disease. So it is a dementia which results from progressive deterioration of brain tissue in areas that are important for language and speech. However, as the disease progresses, it also damages areas of the brain that control our personality, our emotions, and our behavior. So although the first symptoms are problems with speech and language, you will see that the person will start to experience memory loss and personality changes often later on. Now, it's usually caused by frontotemporal dementia, and it may begin as early as in a person's 40s and early 50s. Unfortunately, it is also very difficult to diagnose for a number of reasons. Firstly, because of how young the person is, because it's also not your typical Alzheimer's symptoms of memory loss. And so it is often, unfortunately, misdiagnosed as a psychiatric disorder. Now, there are two variants of primary progressive aphasia. So the first one is called non-fluent aphasia. This is because the person loses fluency in their speech, and it's particularly characterized by hesitant speech. Therefore, the person decreases their talking, they don't talk as much, and they also have difficulty understanding complex sentences. It's important though to keep in mind, especially in the early stages, that although they have these problems, they do not lose the ability to comprehend. So their comprehension is retained in the early stages and even mid stages. The second variant is fluent aphasia or semantic dementia. Now this means that someone can speak in sentences that sound like normal speech, except some of the words are made up words or have some sounds that aren't correct. So while speech is effortless, the meaning is impaired. In the comments below, I'm going to put a link to an interview with a man who has a fluent aphasia. Now, it's so important to understand the reason for the behavior behind those behaviors of people with aphasia. You know, people with aphasia live daily with such frustration and often are confused, angry, because they can't speak as well or understand things the way they did in the past. They may also, depending on how the disease has progressed, act differently because of the brain changes. And you know, you can just imagine yourself looking at the headlines of the newspaper like you've done for the last 20, 30 years and not being able to understand what is written on that page. Or trying to ask somebody to please put the car in the garage and it comes out, put the train in the house. Or whittle tea car on senderplissen. So thousands of alert, intelligent men and women are slowly but surely being plunged into a world of jumbled communication because of aphasia. Recently, I heard somebody describe or compare aphasia to living in a foreign country where you can't understand the language. And I thought that was a really good comparison. You know, you may know when a person is happy or sad or angry because of body language. Possibly you're able to get your feelings across, convey what you're trying to explain in limited ways, but generally you feel like you're in this foreign country. Important thing though for all of us to remember that despite all of these barriers, the person is still that same person inside. So how can family and friends and caregivers support somebody with aphasia? The first thing is it's so important to discuss with the person how they would like you to support and help them. It's good to do this before you end up in a social environment where there is communication happening and the person maybe feels stressed, not sure how to respond, not able to respond. So you want to ask them, it's so important to treat the person as an adult and let him or her be part of that decision making. You can say, do you want me to help you with the word when you're struggling, when we're with a group of friends, or do you want me to wait for you to try and see if you can find the word? And so again, so important to respect the person's dignity and allow them to be part of that decision making. Set up a daily routine for the person with aphasia that includes rest. People with aphasia often tire very easily. If they're taking any speech therapy, you want to allow daily practice time, so important. Also, assume that the person with aphasia is listening and understanding. And in order to do that, you want to maybe check the understanding with close-ended questions and questions that just require a yes or no. Use sentences that are short and to the point. Keep the noise level down and stand where the person with aphasia can see you. Help the person with aphasia to cope with those feelings of frustration and depression. And this might mean that you get the person to go and speak to a counselor, or if you're suspecting that the person has depression, you definitely want to speak to your healthcare provider. Be patient with the person with aphasia, giving them the time, as we said before, that they need to try to speak and get their point across. Again, this is a way we can show that we respect their dignity. If the person is still able to write, and you could ask if that's the way they would like to communicate their point, offer them a whiteboard, a pen and paper. And then finally, just as much as this is hard on the person with aphasia, it is also very hard on the caregiver. And so to you as the caregiver, please do practice self-care. As always, in our previous sessions, as we've spoken about, try to get connected to a support group, reach out to somebody, speak to your doctor, go for counseling yourself, just have some respite time so that you feel that you have the energy to be able to continue to be the best caregiver that you can be. And so once again, thank you so much for your time. Please do like and share these sessions. Look below. I have put in some links to some resources that I think you'll find helpful. And as always, I wish you strength, I wish you peace, and until we meet again for our next session, I wish you moments of joy.